What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the penultimate, the second to last sorcerer that we are going to be talking about in this series. We're going to be covering wild magic today, and then we're going to be talking about the Rune Child next week, finishing that up, and then moving on to Warlock. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we jump into possibly one of the most divisive subclasses in all of Dungeons & Dragons, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. So yeah, this is definitely the most divisive subclass in all of Dungeons & Dragons. I've talked about some divisive ones in the past, but this one absolutely takes the cake. This is the ultimate chaos-causing machine. We talked about the Clockwork Soul back at the beginning of this series. I'll put that up in the icon above. And that was the ultimate order-focused sorcerer. And this one throws all of that out the window in favor of just causing insanity to happen all the time. You've heard of this if you've heard of Dungeons & Dragons. One of your friends has turned into a potted plant at some point or another, and it's just insane. So ranking this is going to be incredibly difficult, but we are going to do our best, and we're going to jump right in. Starting at level 1, we get the feature that makes this very famous, and that is Wild Magic Surge. This is kind of a moment where you lose control of your magic and something just kind of happens, which can be insane. So first of all, there are 50 options of what can happen here, and I am not putting those on the screen because, oh my god, the list is insane. But obviously it is easy to find that list online. It's crazy. So once per turn, a DM can have you roll a d20 immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell of first level or higher. If you roll a 1, roll on the table to determine a magical effect. If it is a spell, it is not going to be affected by meta magic, and if it normally requires concentration, it does not require it in this case and lasts for its full duration. Now, looking through the list of effects, obviously there are some crazy ones in here, right? I mentioned the potted plant one. There's one where your hair falls out, but there's also some really insane ones in here as well. There is, of course, fireballing yourself, which can be bad, but you know, I've mentioned 3 that are bad, but really looking at this, probably arguably in the 60 to 70% range are positive effects, right? You can even get back spell slots. You can cast some spells that would normally be far beyond what you normally would be capable of. I mean, if you rolled one of them as a 5th level magic missile, you roll that at 1st level. I mean, there's not gonna be much surviving that with you at 1st level, which is pretty crazy. So there are some bad ones on this list. But there are also way more good ones than there are bad ones. So to me, it's overall worth it. Of course, there is some bad in there, so it's never going to get a perfect score, but it's really not that bad. It really comes down to DM interpretation on how useful this ends up being, because it is once per turn your DM can have you roll that. It's optional. It's not something that you have to do. At my table, if I have a Wild Magic Sorcerer, you better believe you're rolling it every single time because I want as many surges as possible. But other tables may not be that way. And so in that case, we're going to run into some variance on top of the randomness, which makes this incredibly difficult to rank. Overall, I think a safe bet is in the middle line of basically useful, and so I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10. Now, given different situations, this might be a lot better than that, this might be worse than that. It really depends on your DM, and it really depends on what you roll on a massive table, so it causes a lot of variance. Tying back to that feature though, we also get Tides of Chaos, and this is a pretty neat feature, honestly. So whenever you make an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, you can actually choose to just gain advantage on that, which is great, and you must finish a long rest before you can do it again. However, if you would like to use this again, the DM can have you roll on the table and then you get this back. This is a pretty crazy thing. To me, I'm spamming this. This is a way to force wild magic surges on yourself. I'm spamming this because it's free advantage, so we get an amazing thing there. And of course, you're also going to roll on the table, which again, like I said, is most of the time going to be positive. Yes, there will be times where it backfires, but you know what? That's what makes for memorable Dungeons and Dragons encounters, and I'm all for that. To me, this is really nice, especially combined with the prior feature. I think it's awesome. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's slightly better because we have a little bit more control over it, and you get advantage, so there's kind of a benefit on both sides there. At level 6, we get Bend Luck, and so now we can actually help out our allies whenever they are trying to do certain types of things. So with this, whenever another creature that we can see makes an attack roll, an ability check, or saving throw, we can use our reaction and spend 2 sorcery points to roll 1d4 and add that number as a bonus or penalty to the creature's roll. We can do this after the creature rolls, but before any of the effects actually occur. This is actually pretty cool because what this means is you have an incoming attacker that is trying to hit, let's say, a wizard that you have on your team, and it barely makes it over the wizard's AC of 6, and you can now have this and flip the script, and now it misses. Right, that's a huge one. You can also use it on yourself, but you can also be like, okay, we know that the AC is 17 on such a monster, fighter rolls a 16, and you can use this. Is there metagaming involved in this? Absolutely. Is there any way to get rid of it? Probably not. There's not a whole lot you can do about that because where this happens after the roll, it just kind of leads to that. But honestly, it's not too bad. It's just a 1d4, so it's really nothing crazy to me. And of course it does cost 2 sorcery points, so it's somewhat expensive. So I'm honestly okay with this. I think this would also be an 8 out of 10. I think it's nice being able to throw this around as both a help to your allies and a hurt to your enemies. So either way, I think this works out. At level 14, we get Controlled Chaos, which is a very simple but effective way to boost our effectiveness. Basically, whenever we roll on the Wild Magic Surge table, we can roll twice and pick which one we want. This is great because this takes out a lot of the randomness. There's still a lot of randomness here, right? Because we're still rolling a D100, we have 50 choices. But this takes out some of it, right? We can see, okay, I got Fireball myself or Cast Magic Missile. Okay, that kind of works out, right? So you now have half as much of a chance of rolling something bad. Can you still roll something bad? Absolutely. Will you still roll 2 bad things? Absolutely. Will you sometimes roll 2 of the same thing? It has happened. So it doesn't prevent bad things from happening, but it definitely makes them a lot less likely, which to me just goes back and makes Wild Magic Surge better, which makes Tides of Chaos better, and just makes all of your features that much more spammable. So to me, this is another 8 out of 10. I think it's really, really good as it brings up the effectiveness of basically everything else in this kit. Finally, at level 18, we get Spell Bombardment, and if you weren't doing enough damage with some of your spells already, well, now you can just deal a little bit more. So with this, whenever we roll a max damage roll for one of our spells, we can choose one of those dice and roll it again and add that to the damage. And of course, we can only do this once per turn. This is nice. I wouldn't say that this is anything broken, just because at most you're gonna get a D12 of damage. You're gonna get 12 extra damage out of this at 18th level, and that's assuming that you're casting a spell that uses a D12, which is incredibly rare. I don't see this being the most effective way of dealing extra damage. I do find this to be a little bit lackluster, although in fairness, it's an 18th level feature, so who's getting this far anyway? Yeah, I would give this a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's anything too crazy. Free damage is free damage, but ultimately it's not going to make a huge difference. So what do we think of the Wild Magic Sorcerer? This one is a little crazy, and honestly, I could see probably 4 or 5 different rankings working here depending on your table and your situation and just how you see this subclass. Like I said, I expect a lot of different types of comments and letting me know that what I'm saying is wrong, whether what I said was too low or what I said was too high. That's what the comment section is for, so definitely do that. For me, I think that by and large, this is not a bad subclass. I think overall you're going to get a lot more good out of it than bad. We've definitely covered other subclasses that have randomness that are worse than this. They have fewer options, but they have worse options that are in there that cause problems. This one is, like I said, sitting in like the 60 to 70% positive range. So more often than not, you're going to have a good effect that helps you and your party, which is great. I don't think that that is something that can be discounted. It is something that makes this very, very good to use. You can also spam it by using Tides of Chaos, and that helps you out a lot as well with having advantage on, let's say you have a key saving throw. You definitely want to make sure you're giving yourself advantage on that. Maybe you have an attack roll on a spell, maybe an ability check to get out of some situation, whatever it happens to be. Ultimately, being able to do that and give yourself advantage pretty much all the time is going to be fantastic, and this is one of the most memorable subclasses that's out there as well. So for all of that, you can't really knock it too much. Overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think that the kit overall works pretty well. I think that the good outweighs the bad. I definitely can see why people would say that it is higher or lower than this, but I'd love to see why in the comments down below. So later this week, we are going to be building one together, and then next week we get to move on to the final Sorcerer, which is going to be a lot of fun. But until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.